Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting for September 12th, 2016. We have a couple announcements this evening. Bellingham City Council meets all requirements of the State Washington Open Meetings Act. On Monday, September 19th, 2016, from 1 to 3 p.m., the City Council will host a special meeting related to the comprehensive plan in council chambers. Also, in the packet, there was an error in regards to the second item on our upcoming and meetings announcements. We put in the packet that we will have a public hearing for to allow the connection to the municipal sewer for an existing residence located at 3214. We do not need to have a public hearing for that item, so if you've seen that on the packet, just know that that actually will not have a public hearing. So if we could, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to get Councilmember Murphy to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe we will see, do we have any sign-ups for the public hearing at all?
Roll call.
Oh, sorry, I guess we need to do roll call. Yeah. Sorry, boss.
April Barker. Here. Dan Hamill.
Here.
Jean Knudsen.
Here.
Michael Lilliquist.
Here.
Roxanne Murphy.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Terry Borneman.
Here.
We have no sign-ups for our public hearing. So I was pausing for a moment just to see if we had a rally outside City Hall tonight, so just to see if people were going to come in and be included in public comment, but maybe we'll get started and we'll do our public hearing first, and then if we do, then we will address that. How's that sound? Okay? Okay, so we have a resolution authorizing the relinquishment of surplus utility easements and the use restrictions reserved during prior street vacations in the waterfront district. And I'm going to turn it over to Ted Carlson.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. This is a public hearing for the council to consider relinquishment of utility easements in the waterfront sub-area plan. So I think it's important to first start off by saying that all of the rights of way in this area have already been vacated. So when we look at the map, and the map is Exhibit C in the council packet, and I'm sorry, I don't have the page number. I think it's 31 or 34, I'm sorry, Mike, 32, shows what's on the screen here for people to see is Exhibit C, which is a map of the waterfront area. The dark line surrounding it is the area that will be included in the port's binding site plan. That's the mechanism for the port to create lots, to create the rights of way for the city, for us to build the arterials and install the utilities that were part of the adoption of the sub-area plan and the associated documents that laid out how those facilities will be constructed, whose responsibility it is to pay for the infrastructure, whose responsibility it is to transfer property, vacate easements, etc. So also in your packet are the original ordinances that vacated the right-of-way down in this portion of the sub-area plan. That was done many, many years ago. There were some remnants of right-of-way that were vacated when the City Council and the Port adopted the sub-area plan along with the interlocal and interlocal for facilities and the other documents that governed the waterfront. So at that time, all of these rights-of-way were vacated with the exception of the right-of-way that's in the title, in the tidelands. That requires Department of Natural Resources approval. The right-of-ways that are in the tidelands were not vacated at that time, and that's not part of the action that the council is being asked to consider tonight. With the vacation of those right-of-ways, the city retained an easement for utilities within those previous right-of-way areas. So the width of the right-of-way at the time when it was vacated, the city was granted, reserved an easement specific for public utilities and franchise utilities. What we're asking the council to consider is to relinquish those easements, because those easements are now we did not go back in and install water or sewer. We don't need them. They're encumbrances on the port's property. And when the council and the Port Commission considered all of the documents with the waterfront, one of the items that's included in the interlocal between the two cities is that the city will not only vacate the right-of-way, but relinquish any remaining easements that are surplus to our needs. Also in that interlocal agreement is a requirement for the port to dedicate future right-of-way to the city that we'll need when we go out and construct the new arterial streets and supply the public infrastructure, water, sewer, stormwater to serve the site. So all of those property transfers were considered when the documents were adopted. At that time, both the port and the city considered not only the vacation of the right-of-way, relinquishment of the easements, as well as the dedication of future right-of-way and transfer of real property, and at the time considered that when we take all of those things together, it met the standard laid out in RCW in terms of each agency receiving the true and fair value for either the transfer of property or the dedication of right-of-way or the vacation of right-of-way. So when the interlocal between the port and the city were adopted, that was part of that agreement. Right now in the process, the city and port are working on that binding site plan. So the port's working with city staff to identify the right-of-way that will be needed for, in the first phase, construction of Granary and Laurel, which are the two arterial streets that will serve the site, as well as contain the utilities. So the action to be considered today is whether or not these easements are in fact surplus to the city's need, and again, it's staff's recommendation that they are. If so, they're vacated. I'm going to put another map up here. Hopefully we can read it. It's getting a little bit of glare. I apologize for that. But what I put up here, the map in your packet shows the easements to be relinquished. This map actually shows those as well, but it also shows the future right-of-way. So this is the Granary right-of-way and the Laurel Street right-of-way. Again, we're working on the survey for those right now, preparing the legal descriptions. It is a requirement of the interlocal agreement that the port dedicate that right-of-way to us, so they're bound to do that. So by relinquishing these easements, the city doesn't need to be concerned that we'll actually receive right-of-way to construct the facilities required in the agreement, because it's a requirement of the port that they do that. So what will happen is, once the rights-of-way are defined legally, they will be recorded with the county, and the city will get that right-of-way that will allow us to build the arterials and those utilities to serve the site. That will probably happen sometime in October, but first, as part of that binding site plan, which is the land use portion of this, staff wanted to, in essence, clean the site, relinquish the easements so that those were not part of that transaction. So that's what's before the council tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions about the process to determine that the easements are surplus, or the agreements between the port and the city and how we came to this process. So with that, that's really my presentation. Answer any questions and then open it up to public hearing.
Council members, questions? No? Is there anyone who wishes to speak on the public hearing on the right-of-way access, or the easements, I'm sorry? Is there anyone? Because once, twice. Just want to make sure that if anybody wanted to speak a public comment for the easements, that they could do that. Okay?
Apologize, I did fail to mention one thing, and it's a little bit hard to see on this map. I think it's a little clearer in your packet. But you can see with the various hatching, the two different types of easements to be relinquished. With the dots here as an example, and then here is an example where we have the larger hatching. The larger hatching, these areas here, I think I should point out that in those easements, the city will be relinquishing the easements for future utility purposes, but the railroad will be retaining any rights that they have through a franchise for those. It's important to point that out, that the action that council takes tonight does not in any way change the railroad's rights to whatever franchise rights they have on the port property. This is only for the city's utilities.
And one other thing I wanted to mention is that the numbering system in our packet has the agenda bill item as 21350. It is actually 21351. So I just wanted to correct that in the packet and for the agenda item. Councilmember Knudsen.
I move the resolution in the packet.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion in front of us. Discussion? Questions? No? Okay, so all those in favor to the resolution authorizing the relinquishment of the surplus utility easements and the use restrictions reserved during prior street vacations in the waterfront district. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay.
you.
Thank you very much, Ted. So given the number of people we have here who have come to support a resolution, let's start with the mic. So we're going to move into public comment period, but I just wanted to say that given the number of people we have here for a particular item, the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe support, and that this item is currently at the end of our agenda for one of our last items of the evening. So if there is no objection from fellow council members, I'd like to propose three things. One, that we move the resolution to the beginning of the agenda, right after public comment, and that also, if need be, that we extend public comment from 15 minutes to 30 minutes to try and include as many people as possible. And then at 30 minutes, if there is anybody left over, then we can reconvene that again afterwards, after we've done our other items. So fellow council members, is everyone comfortable with that? Okay, all right, wonderful. So we will start with public comment, and our first ones are, it's getting a little, I've even got my microphone on here. It's getting a little hard to hear. Our first speaker is Yoshi Ravel. Actually, before we get into this, a couple of things that I just wanted to remind everyone. Public comment is 3 minutes, and we're going to give everyone a little opportunity to know when to wrap up. And when you've got 30 seconds left, our city clerk is going to give a little ding on her bell. And we do want to provide a safe, fair environment for everyone here. So no jeering or clapping, and we're going to provide a safe environment. And if I have mispronounced your name, I apologize in advance, because sometimes it's hard to distinguish. So please just clarify. Our first speaker is Yoshi Ravel, and then Shiara D'Angelo and Jill McIntyre-Witt. If you wanted to come and line up here, and we'll start public comment.
Thank you. My name is Yoshi Ravel. Thank you, members of the audience and staff, members of the City Council, and Madam Mayor. I was just outside participating in a very touching reminder of our obligations to protect the lands and waters. I was touched many times and brought to tears because, and one of the speakers said, I am to remember who I am. I am to remember who I am. My own culture has tried very diligently to teach me to forget who I am. My own culture has taught me to worship things like money and property and materialistic things, which are very deadening to my soul, very deadening to our souls. And it is still in our spiritual tradition that this is all a gift. The Bible says, in the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, that is, this is all a gift. And we've forgotten that it's a gift. and we abuse it. We tear our lands apart, we tear our mountains apart, we pollute our waters, we pollute our airs. We're so caught up in our own fear that we're willing to destroy our home in a purely suicidal act. The land and the waters are a gift. We have an obligation to ourselves, and as was said outside, to the seventh generation, to protect and honor this gift, to treat it kindly and with gentleness and with great respect and great gratitude. Every breath is a gift. Every sip of water is a gift. Every bite of food is a gift. And if we can step outside of our fear for only a moment and be truly grateful for this beautiful gift, we might stop destroying our gift and ourselves and allow the tears of our pain that we've done to ourselves to come out. Because when the tears come out, things feel a lot better. Thank you, and I wish you all a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Yoshi. Chiara D'Angelo, Jill McIntyre-Witt, and then Dina Jensen. Come forward, Jill, and then I'll have to put her on afterwards.
Catch my
Just
breath.
breathe. We're
Catch
okay.
my breath.
Yeah.
Just sprinting.
And if you could just restate your name for the record.
My name is Chiara Rose D'Angelo Patricio. And do you need where I live?
No?
Okay. I'm really out of breath. I wasn't expecting that.
I don't want to rush you, dear, but you have your clock is
Yeah,
ticking.
I
okay?
understand.
Okay.
When I was 13, an Indigenous elder came to me and told me about a ceremony called Sundance. And he explained that what happens in this ceremony is that people pierce themselves and then they pray. And they pray by pulling. And he asked me if I knew what I would pray for. And at the age of 13, I knew exactly what I would pray for because I love something very, very, very much. And that's the ocean. I love the animals in the ocean. And it wasn't an innocent love. It was a really deep love. I grew up swimming in the ocean. I grew up watching orca whales. And it's as deep of a love as I have for the ocean now. And I watched on Oprah and these little moments of watching like the Pacific garbage dryer. And he said to me, how would you know if your prayers were true or not? Because in order for the piercings to break, your prayers have to be true. And I said, who would ever, given the opportunity to pray for anything, pray for themselves, given the state of the planet right now? And I've been on a journey ever since then. And an elder, just like this moment, called me with a voice saying, I'm at Sundance. I was just at someone with Sundance ceremony, and I told them about you. And in that ceremony, they felt you, and they need you to come help them. And this is, so I got a call to go to North Dakota. So I went to North Dakota, and I walked into 14 people that were trying to stop a pipeline. And I didn't know how many people would come, but thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of First Nations showed up. And 150 nations joined hands for the first time in 150 years. And the first time ever on the same issue, that many tribes together, standing as one nation with one purpose, and that's to protect clean water. And that's my experience. And I can only say with that experience that we have to do whatever we can to support these people, and that they fully deserve it, and that they're there in humility and prayer and peace, and
Time.
they need all of the power that they can get, because they can only forge so much power
Time.
with their bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. Jill McIntyre-Witt?
Am I supposed to say something first?
Nope, you've
Oh,
got 3
okay.
minutes to say whatever you want.
Okay, so I'm here tonight in asking you to pass the resolution that you put up for consideration to stand with Standing Rock. We had a rally outside with probably at least 1,000 people. I know some of you were there, and I appreciate the words of Councilmember Roxanne Murphy tonight, as well as bringing forth the resolution. I wasn't able to follow your discussion this afternoon, so I hope it was fruitful. I also want to mention that because there's people at home watching this that couldn't come to the rally, but there is an awakening happening, and people are waking up to the fact that we need change, and we need to move to renewable energy, and we need to do it quickly. And the bottom line is that we're having a climate emergency, and I'm not just saying that because I'm like some radical weirdo. This is actually reality. The science is clear. I am an environmental scientist, but it's our hearts that need to act. And so I'm asking the City Council to pass this resolution, speak from your heart, but I'm also here to ask that we take it one step further, because it's easy to pass a resolution to stand with Standing Rock. That's the easy part of your job. The hard part of your job is to put a climate change filter on every decision you make moving forward. So I would like to ask you, along with the citizens of Bellingham, but especially our leaders, because it's up to us to ask our leaders to lead. If we're having an emergency, emergencies do not involve compromise. Politics involves compromise. There is no compromise. The planet is talking to us, and we need you to act accordingly to what the science and the planet is telling us. So please pass this resolution, but moving forward, make sure that you're making decisions for our city to lower our carbon footprint. Make sure we're transitioning to clean energy, putting solar panels on all our city buildings if we can. I can go on and on. Change out our fleet so it's not gas powered, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a lot of work we can do at the city. I hope we win the Energy Prize. If you don't know about the Georgetown Energy Prize, for those listening at home, please visit the City of Bellingham website so we can win the prize and gain some money to help our city further take away our reliance on fossil fuels. This is a transition. We need strong action from our government officials, and I can't thank you enough for standing with Standing Rock. Seattle passed a resolution tonight as well. I sent a letter to Kelly Linville today asking if you could send a letter like the Mayor Ed Murray of Seattle to the Standing Rock Sioux Nation. I sent you a copy of it, so I'd appreciate if you can add that along with the City Council for our leadership from our city. I would appreciate that. And I just want to thank all the citizens that came out tonight in front of City Hall and the Lummi Nation for helping us gather to stand with Standing Rock. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. And I know the room just filled up a little bit more here, so I'm just going to remind everyone of a couple things. If you want to speak at public comment, please do sign up down here. You get three minutes, and you get a warning at 30 seconds that you've got time to wrap it up. And we want to provide a safe environment for everyone, so no jeering or clapping, and we welcome everyone, and we are going to hold public comment for another 15 minutes, I guess. What's that? Oh, and also that we are going to move the resolution forward so that most of you can be here to see that vote. So next on our list is Dina Jensen, then Joseph McDonald, and I believe that's Patrick.
Dina Jensen, Birch Bay. I am so grateful for the council members here who have been involved in drafting the resolution expressing concern regarding alleged violations of due process and lack of meaningful tribal consultation regarding permits for the Dakota Access Pipeline. On August 30th, representatives of 8 Washington tribes traveled to Standing Rock, North Dakota. On one of the occasions when Lummi Indian Business Council Chairman Tim Ballou spoke in Standing Rock, he said, "Our council stopped a project that would have desecrated a sacred site, much like this site is sacred to your people. And we did it with the Coast Salish delegation that we traveled with today. they stood with us. Indian nations all across the country stood with us. And in kind, we're here to stand with you to make sure that tribal sovereignty and treaty rights are honored and protected. When Chairman Ballew talks about stopping a project that would have desecrated a sacred site, I remind you that we are all working to support that stoppage right now. We are doing work here in Whatcom County, and we are standing with individuals of Lummi Nation and Nooksack Nation and other affected tribes to make sure we don't have to get to the point where we must stand up to bulldozers with our bodies. We are appealing to our county council at their meeting tomorrow night to vote no on contract extensions for an EIS that is no longer needed because the Army Corps, in this case, ruled that the construction of the Gateway Pacific Coal Export Facility would violate Lummi usual and accustomed treaty fishing rights. Our help is needed everywhere that sacred lands, waters, and life forms are being threatened. All actions for the benefit of our communities nationwide must issue from these priorities. Our help is needed to support those in Standing Rock who are living this protection in a legal, physical, and spiritual way. I hope I will be able to thank you, council members, for answering their call for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Joseph McDonald, Patrick, and then Mary Pete and Marion Vidal.
My name is Joseph McDonald, and you know I have a speech impediment. The ringleaders of the Bible Bashing freaks who propagate the lie that Jesus is going to burn people in hell forever or hold Trump signs has revealed his ugly head, and the holy war continues. You can see the freaks at the Friday Peace Visual protest in downtown Bellingham by the Federal Building at 4 p.m. or at the Saturday market sporting around Trump signs. A word on hell. I think people, regardless of what they have been taught all their lives, need to ask themselves the question, is Jesus Christ so messed up that he will burn people in hell forever? And does 70 to 100 years of sin justify billions upon billions of years of torture? Would heaven be a happy place watching your relatives burn in hell? The lie that you surely won't die lives on through a everlasting burning torture. It's a misconception to think that God delights in torturing people. Maybe during peacetime, people have realized that they need to protest the freaks to get rid of them. I encourage people to make a sign and express their minds. By protesting the freaks, you make a statement to other people saying that their hate speech is unacceptable to you, and you're not buying into the BS. Or does Bellingham like the evil hate mongers? Unfortunately, if you don't oppose them, then you are for them by default. You give them a license to harass people. If you disagree with what I say, all I can say is that actions speak louder than words. Then prove me wrong by protesting them. I think that Bellingham buying into their BS is like Germany buying into Adolf Hitler's BS, or how some of America has bought into the Ku Klux Klan's BS. I have always said, if their metaphorical cross-burning, terroristic rhetoric is considered Christianity, then I don't want nothing to do with it. I almost feel sorry for people who will vote for Trump. Not that Hillary is any better. I think all people will have a rude awakening when they see their Babylonian kingdom fall, regardless of who gets the presidency. Thank you, and God bless America while she is still here.
Okay, we have Patrick, Mary Pete, and Marion Vidal.
All right, Inche, Stongo. My name is Patrick Austin Freeland, Wind Clan, Muscogee Creek Nation. I currently serve as the Director of Student Support.
You want to bring the mic a little closer to you, Patrick? We can't quite hear you. There you go.
Is it working? Okay. Huh? So I currently work at Northwest Indian College, and I've been in Bellingham about 2 years, so it's good to see you all again. Thank you all for your service, and thank you all members of the citizenry public for being here, as always. I had hoped that a lot of those people that were outside would eventually make their way in here, because sometimes, you know, more than the hot button issues, it's nice to know what's going on around you. It's important. There is no civil right without civil responsibility. But to keep that in mind, I'd like to talk to you a bit about two differing worldviews in relation to this North Dakota Access Pipeline, much that many of you, I'm sure, are very aware of. But one is looking at things in terms of resources, and others in terms of relatives. It's when you see, in terms of a resource, you can have a very destined future. We know exactly how much volume our planet has. We have a pretty good idea of how much extractable resources we have, but we also have a really sharp understanding of what those impacts will be in terms of climate change, in terms of greenhouse gases, environmental pollution, and lack of environmental policy accounting for some of these social losses. Another, looking at in terms of relations, we think when you go to the North Dakota site, most people drive by on the highway. It's a big, empty, barren land, hours between gas stations. But where we stayed, we slept on beds of sweetgrass and sage and buffalo berries. These are medicine. It's a very important, culturally important piece to not only the peoples there, but the peoples that are connected to that place, including the water, when you consider them as a relative also. But ultimately, to think in these two dichotomies of relatives versus resources is to really think about our future. When we have an understanding of our resources, we've got a pretty good idea of what our future is going to be like, and it's not looking so grand. But when we think in terms of relativism, we don't know. And it's uncomfortable that we don't know. But that's an important piece. It's to boldly say that at this point in history, there was a time when I could say that I don't know. But more importantly, I can say that with the help of all of these individuals in this room, some of them outside and others, that we can figure out a way forward. One of the best ways that we can do this is through our tribal colleges, through our other institutions of higher learning. That we, especially in this town, I've noticed has a very strong push towards developing, renewable energies, to developing healthy, sustainable techniques. I've never seen anywhere else in the world that would hold over $200 million of real property around Lake Whatcom, specifically for non-development. This for Indiana would have been sold yesterday. So I just want to say thank you. Keep pushing forward, and I hope that you pass this resolution. Hello.
Thank you, Patrick. Mary Pete, and then Marion Bedell.
Whoops. Good evening. Thank you, Council, for this chance to view our beliefs. And I'm hoping that the City Council will join other communities across the country condemning the building of the Dakota Access Pipeline. We should stand with the Standing Rock Sioux for the preservation of their health, clean water, and the preservation of their ancient burial grounds. And for others in the Dakota Territories who object to the destruction that this pipeline will bring. Our world as we know it is changing right before our eyes. Scientists have acknowledged the climate change. I live in a heavily forested area, and I can see the forest dying. There's not enough water. Last year's forest fires in Washington State were indicative of just how badly a forest fire can burn an extreme dry temperature. I'm afraid for this. The weather this year is somewhat better, but still awfully dry. If we have but few or no trees in the future, what will happen to our ecosystem? Plants, animals, wildlife, fish, marine life, all will be affected. Fossil fuels are for the very rich, and corporations care nothing for people, as is evidenced by the recent attacks by dogs and pepper spray on innocent protectors. Have we learned nothing from the Southern Civil Rights era? Our Native Americans are our country's best stewards. We should give them the support they deserve, and the dignity that they deserve. In doing so, as well, through environmental and conservation programs, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion Bedell. And then we probably have room for 2 more people. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak to public comment, I can take 2 more, and you can just say your name when you come up to the front. All you, Marion. Make it tall.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. My name is still Marion Bedell, and it's a pleasure to speak to you tonight. I haven't been here for quite a while. Some of you may have noticed.
I did.
I
did.
Good. I have worked on water, all of you know, for many, many years, so obviously I'm asking you to pass this new resolution for the protection of the waters here, locally, everywhere. Water is life, and we have to have it. Sometimes people need motivation, have to hear things and feel things in their heart to allow them to move themselves forward. So I'm going to tell you something motivational tonight. In the sleepy town of San Juanita, there's a story that the Padre tells of a young senor and senorita and the serenade of the bells. Seems they'd asked the Padre for permission to be married early in the spring. But their folks had made just one condition, that the mission bells had to ring. Everybody knew the bells were broken and hadn't sounded for a long, long time. Then one night, the village was astounded, for the bells began to chime, ding, 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 ding. Still the bells are broken, goes the story. But if in your heart a true love dwells, they will ring for you in all their glory. That's the serenade of the bells, the serenade of the bells.
Thank you, Marion, for bringing your unique qualities here. So I'm going to take two more public speakers, and well, I actually had to limit it, and I'm only because we have to move the resolution forward. So, if you could please state your name for the record.
Yeah. My name is Gwen Hunter, and I'm anti any pipeline anywhere that sends any fuel, fossil fuels anywhere. And we in Bellingham saw firsthand in June of 1999 the effects of a busted pipeline. We lost 3 kids, 2 10-year-olds and a friend of my daughter's who was 18. So it's extremely, I can't imagine that anyone in this room would not vote for this resolution. So I want to thank you, and please honor those kids and honor those families and honor and protect the ones that are out there trying to protect their own kids and subsequent generations from the same fate. Please, thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. And so one more person for public comment, but if there's anyone who wishes to speak, we can come back to public comment at the end of the evening, but we do want to move the resolution forward, so please come on down, and if you could, state your name for the record.
Certainly. Good evening. I'm Lori Abrams. I'm from Ferndale, Washington, and I'm here to, of course, support the resolution, which I'm sure you all already, Kelly, will already be voting in favor for. I have very little doubt in my mind of that because I've been in front of you all before in other realms and seen the wonderful work that you do and the wonderful work that Mayor Kelly does as well. And I'd also like to say that my son is Yupik Eskimo, and we've seen in his village the devastation that climate change is already creating for the Eskimo people up in Alaska. Their village is half the size that it used to be because of the waters and because of the permafrost that's melting underneath their village. Their houses are falling down. They are having to move inland, which is far away from where their fishing areas are, their fish camps. So it's not just here. When you make a move and you make a difference here, you make a difference there as well. So for him, I've come tonight as well to speak for him. And also I'd like to ask that the city at some point consider banning styrofoam. You wonderfully took away plastic bags, but the use of styrofoam in our community is so prevalent. I live in Ferndale, just around the corner from the Sonic, which throws away tons of styrofoam every day because that's all they use is styrofoam. And that stuff, as you know, does not go away for generations and generations and generations. So I'd ask that along with the plastic bags, you get rid of that, and hopefully we can get the county council to do the same one day. And I thank you all for your work and for letting me be here.
Thank you, Lori. And also, I just wanted to note that you were volunteering and translating out there, providing free sign language for the hearing impaired. So thank you for that. So we're going to close public comment for now. Again, if there's anybody who wishes, we can speak this up at the end of the, after we've covered our agenda items. We can go back to public comment. But just because all of you are here and are very interested, we are going to change the agenda item as we talked about earlier this evening. And we are going to move in front to the resolution regarding the Dakota Access Pipeline. Resolution expressing concern regarding alleged violations of due process and lack of meaningful tribal consultation regarding permits for the Dakota Access Pipeline. So this afternoon, we did make a couple suggested changes due to what's happening on the federal level on Friday. So I'm just going to read the change in the whereas in our resolution. If anybody's interested, the entire resolution is posted on our website, and the updated one will be there tomorrow. So we have one change. It's the last whereas in the resolution. Whereas on September 9, 2016, the federal government voluntarily called for a halt to all Dakota Access Pipeline work, and the Department of Justice, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Department of the Interior released a joint statement that the federal agencies will not authorize further pipeline work until it can determine whether it will need to reconsider any of its previous decisions. In light of important issues raised by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and other tribal nations and their members regarding the Dakota Access Pipeline specifically, and pipeline-related decision-making generally. And then the rest remains the same from the draft. So it went from a draft today to our final, which we are going to vote on.
Need a motion.
I'm just waiting for someone special to make a motion.
I'd just like to speak first a little bit about this. You know, it's been very concerning for me to watch this from afar, wishing that I could be actually with Standing Rock Sioux to stand in solidarity. So I think one of the best things that I could do, you know, with the work that we have to do here is to draft a resolution asking the Bellingham City Council to stand in solidarity too. I think this is a sign from our community with the number of people that showed up to the rally this evening that there's so much that we can do to protect our environment, so much that we can do to support tribes and ways that we can work together as a community to take on these important tasks to protect Mother Earth. So I just hope that the Bellingham City Council will join us in this work and support this resolution. So I move that we pass the resolution to stand in solidarity with Standing Rock Sioux and their concerns against the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of passing the resolution as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And I want to thank the other council members for allowing us to move this to the beginning of the agenda so that you can all participate. Thank you. So we are going to go back to our regular exciting agenda, and we are going to start with our report outs from our committee meetings this afternoon. And our first one is Lake Whatcom Reservoir and Natural Resources, and Dan Hamill is the chair.
Thank you, Council President. We had 3 items before us this afternoon. The first item was related to Washington Conservation Corps' end-of-year presentation. Bellingham citizens have benefited during the past 13 years from the city's relationship with the Washington Conservation Corps. The Public Works Department currently sponsors 2 crews through a joint fund agreement with the Washington State Department of Ecology and the Federal AmeriCorps program. The crews have been crucial to success of the city's habitat restoration. And today, members of Washington Conservation Corps highlighted some of the projects they are working on, including the Squalicum Creek Reroute, which won the American Public Works Award, the Patton Daylighting Project, the ongoing monitoring project at Cemetery Creek, the site of the Olympic pipeline explosion in 1999, and the Galbraith Mountain Alder and Maple Thinning Project, which will allow conifers to regrow on the mountain. Washington Conservation Corps also leverages our community's volunteer resources through large-scale planting events and food and furniture drives for families with low incomes as part of their service ethic. This was for information only. The second presentation was regarding the Homeowner Incentive Program, which is a joint effort between the City of Bellingham and Whatcom County as partners in the Lake Whatcom Cooperative Management Program. The Homeowner Incentive Program provides technical and financial assistance to Lake Whatcom watershed residents to encourage and motivate homeowners to make voluntary changes to their property for the purposes of improving water quality and fostering stewardship. This second presentation was led by Renee LaCroix from Natural Resources and provided information on the 2017 expansion of the program. Homeowner Incentive Program version 2.0 will focus on property types with the largest impacts and will increase the maximum investment per property by eliminating a cap, minimizing the homeowner's total out-of-pocket costs, establishing a minimum threshold of 25% phosphorus reduction per project, and requiring an access agreement to ensure return on investment. Council brought up concerns about how this program will be paid for, and that topic will go to the Lake Whatcom Policy Group for further discussion and consideration. This item was for information only. The third item was a presentation on the proposed wetland and habitat program update. The City of Bellingham is developing a wetland and habitat mitigation program to benefit our community. The goals of the program are to improve the success rate of mitigation projects, reduce costs associated with mitigation, coordinate mitigation efforts, and streamline the mitigation process. The program will encompass all drainage basins in the City of Bellingham and urban growth area. Annalise Burns from Natural Resources provided information on the background of the program as it relates to flood control, groundwater recharge, water quality improvements, fish and wildlife, and recreation. She also covered benefits of mitigation programs, including more efficient use of funds, streamlining permitting, and predictability with multi-agency buy-in. She covered mitigation banks, in-lieu fee programs, and advanced mitigation. Current status of the program is that Natural Resources has hired 2 consultants, created a steering committee, and is hiring a new staff position. The third item was also for information only. End of committee report.
Thank you, Dan. And we're going to move to Committee of the Whole. This afternoon we had 3 items, but we moved one of them forward, which is the resolution. So we have 2 items left. And the first one was a discussion of our joint legislative agenda for the 2017 session. So we had a presentation by Brian Heinrich, our Deputy Administrator. The things that are on our joint, and again, this is with us working with the port and the county as well. So this is all partners agreeing on these particular legislative items. The items that we're proposing right now are the MATCA, the Model Toxic Control Account, to implement infrastructure projects and improvements, which includes transportation, aquatic invasive species control, fiscal sustainability, criminal justice, and social services funding. And then Councilmember Hamel added the additional, actually I didn't write that down, Dan. Would you mind relaying that?
Sure. Thank you, Council President. So I just had 2 items that I wanted to look at a little bit deeper with a little more detail, and that's the Prevent the Cliff and Homeless funding, and that has to do with the sunsetting of the document recording surcharge that funds homeless housing programs. Currently, $30 of the $48 of the document recording fee goes to homeless housing programs. That generates $3.4 million per biennium, and if we did not, if that were allowed to sunset, we would lose locally approximately $2.1 million per biennium. The second item was supporting a robust state housing trust fund that has to do with the Bellingham Home Fund, which is the voter-approved levy, and having a strong housing trust fund provides investment back to the community. And what I was asking for is that we ask it to go back to its previous level of $200 million in the state's capital budget.
Thank you, Dan. Also, I asked if Initiative 1433 does not pass at the ballot, that we look at putting that on our legislative agenda as well. This is now going to move to the county and the port to review, and this will be back in front of us at the end of October, earlier November, and it will probably be after election time, so we'll know whether that's going to happen or not. Is there anything else that anyone had? No? Okay.
Didn't we make a motion today to approve this?
Okay.
The
Okay.
oldest guy up here is the more awake of all of us. Thanks.
Right.
So we have a motion in front of us to approve the draft legislative agenda for the 2017 session. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The next item in front of us was an update on our Planning and Community Development Department work program update and emerging issues. So Rick Sepler, our Planning and Community Development Director, gave us an overview in regards to what's happening in the Planning Department and how they're proceeding. These are divided into 3 different areas. One of them is Long Range Planning Division, the Development Services Division, and the Community and Economic Development Division. So right now, in the queue is annexation phasing, level of service issues, low barrier shelters, the sale and Aloha Army properties, stormwater updates, final phase of lean, downtown design, economic development strategic actions, city center implementation strategy, residential illegal unit enforcement, and our running list of items. And also something that is in the works right now that Rick Sepler gave us an update on is our rental registration, and noting that so far we've had 641 inspections, 321 have passed, and then on after first inspection, 114 have now passed. So we are moving forward on that. And then in the emerging issues, one of them is vacation rentals, waterfront plan amendment for downtown waterfront area, commercial code implementation, homeless services needs, comprehensive strategy, tiny and affordable housing, and dedicated outdoor air system and sandwich boards. After some discussion from the council members, it was brought forward by Council Member Borneman that he hopes that we can prioritize the sandwich board because it is quite an engaged discussion in the public and the community right now. So he asked if we could move that and look as a priority item. Anything else anyone wants to add on that one? Okay, and that was for information only. And we've already passed the resolution, so that concludes Committee of the Whole. We don't have any minutes to approve right now, so then we are going to move into older new business.
Excuse me, Pinky, there was a ordinance we wanted to move to the Committee of the Whole.
Oh, I thought I was going to do that once we came to consent agenda.
Okay.
Sorry, that's what is that correct, Peter? I'm just making sure I did that right.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can do it either way, but it's in a consent agenda right now.
I'll pull it out at the beginning of consent agenda, okay? But thank you for keeping us on track, Elizabeth. Councilmember Murphy.
I just wanted to express gratitude to Jill McIntyre-Witt because she organized a rally this evening asking community members to stand in solidarity with Standing Rock Sioux. This amassed a gathering of what I would guess would be 1,000 people. And to have 1,000 community members come together to speak in a unified way on anything is pretty amazing. And so I just really appreciate that so many diverse people came together to express their interest in this issue and the topics related to protecting the environment. And I just value that everyone that showed up and voiced their concerns. And so I also thank the council for supporting the initiative. This means a lot to our community. Haishkasiyo.
Council members, anyone else for older new business? No? Okay, last call. We're going to move on to the mayor's report.
I will be brief. First of all, I do want to thank Terry for representing me at the Eleanor House ribbon cutting. I'm very excited that there is so much activity going on in our community with housing, regardless of just appreciating the broad range. So thank you, Terry, for doing that. And when I was first in the legislature, we funded the Conservation Corps, and I was so impressed with the presentation that they gave, all taking their jobs so seriously and seeing how much they can add to our own manpower in the city and other places to actually get things done. And that's their focus. And they're just very, exceptional young people that are doing that. So that's kind of fun to see something actually work. The only thing that I have today is reappointment of Rosalie Nass to the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission, and that's just for your information. And I did want to say a couple things about the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission. And one of the things that the council did at my recommendation, I think 2 years ago, was to not make it necessary for the Neighborhood Advisory Commission to take a position on neighborhood plans. And I definitely believe neighborhoods should be involved, and I think I've mentioned when I was on the Planning Commission, there was no conversation between developers and neighborhoods when a project was going forward. They first read about it in the newspaper when the hearing was scheduled. And so I've been a strong proponent of working with neighborhoods in this process. And I just wanted to clarify, in case anyone was wondering, what the effect is on the change that you adopted. And basically it's allowing and encouraging the Neighborhood Advisory Committee to ask many questions, to have they'd have Rick come every month, I think, if we could allocate that time for him, but to get as much information as possible so neighborhoods as individual neighborhoods or individual residents can engage in the city's open public process. And there were a lot of what I saw as shortcomings with the way that the Neighborhood Advisory Committee was making decisions on what they supported and what they didn't. There was not a lot of complete involvement of the whole group. And the Neighborhood Advisory Committee themselves supported not doing that particular activity anymore. But we are not cutting off any information to the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Committee. We are making sure that if they have special requests that we present those to them and keep them regularly updated on what's happening on the comprehensive planning world. But I think that we have a very robust public process, and I feel like it's the best use of the time of that committee is for people to get information so they can truly engage. So I didn't know if you had been getting any information or anything about it. As you know, I'm kind of hear no evil, see no evil, so I'm completely out of the loop sometimes when things are swirling through the blogosphere. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I wanted to make it clear that this was not an attempt to thwart anybody. This was an attempt to reprioritize what we do at the Neighborhood Advisory Committee meetings, because we have a land use planning process in the city, which I think, is a good one and that we can strengthen, but we need to give people the right information so they can engage and make their opinions known. And with that, I'm done. It's nice to be back.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly. So we're going to move to consent agenda, but as we alluded to before, we're going to pull an item off the consent agenda, and we're going to do that first. It's Agenda Bill Item 21330, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham, Washington regarding the latecomer process, amending Chapters 14.02 and 2.56 of the Bellingham Municipal Code. And The reason that we are pulling this from consent agenda is that our charter for ordinances says that we need 3 readings, which we have not completed for this one. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ted Carlson.
Thank you, Ted Carlson, Public Works. Apologize for the oversight by staff. This item should have been heard in committee, as Council President Vargas mentioned. What this was a proposed modification to the Bellingham Municipal Code. Back in 2015, the state legislature made some minor changes to the latecomer portion of the RCWs. Essentially, now municipalities are allowed to initiate latecomers for utility extensions on their own. We've been able to do that for transportation-related projects, but previously on utility projects, we could only do it in conjunction with a private developer. This allows the city, when constructing utilities, to initiate that process for cost recovery. That's the primary purpose of the code amendment. As was mentioned, there's 2 chapters that are being amended. The second chapter deals with the hearing examiner's role, and that appeals during the latecomer process go to the hearing examiner. It says in the code that the hearing examiner's recommendation may be heard in front of the council, and the council may take additional public comment. The recommended change is to require that the council hear additional comment or hear the comments. So we want to make sure that people that have appeals will come to the council for your consideration, such as adding a better public process into it. Some minor code revisions that really are intended to clarify. There's a memo in the packet from legal that I think does a good job of outlining those. So what is before the council today is to request approval of the ordinance. If you do, then we'll bring it back for third and final at your next meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Ted, this seems really familiar. Did we have a informational work session on this?
Yes,
Okay.
you did, and it was part of the kind of the multiple touch where with ordinances we're trying to bring them in front of the council kind of as an information item. You know, this one in particular I don't think was very controversial. It was very much just aligning with state law. So it was kind of brought forward as information only with intention that we'd bring it back in committee for a vote, and it just went on the consent rather than on committee. But you
Okay,
have
well,
seen it before.
I think it's a great program to implement, and I can understand why you thought we already voted, because I thought we already voted.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to pass the ordinance for the City of Bellingham regarding the latecomer process amending chapters 1402 and 2.56 of the Bellingham Municipal Code. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm not opposed.
Before
I don't get to do
ask
that. I don't get
question,
to do
is
that.
there
I'm sorry.
something else you needed to say, Ted?
No, after this.
Okay. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And Ted?
I'm having a tough night, so the reason I'm standing up here at the podium is there was an oversight that I made during the public hearing. I was talking to Peter during your committee, and he thought that I could just bring it forward to you. I don't think it's going to require another vote, but something that I wanted to bring to your attention, very, very minor, and it has to do with what was in your packet. You can't even tell, but I'm going to show you. This is the exhibit that's in your packet. I'm going to put up the exhibit I was supposed to put up and failed to do so.
And this map is on page 32 if the public is wondering.
And what you probably are very hard to pick up here is there's a little yellow strip right here, very, very small. I'll put a blown-up version of it here. This was an oversight when they prepared the relinquishment document. That little yellow strip should have been included in the relinquishment document that's in your packet. It does not change the resolution that you voted on because the maps weren't actually in the resolution. But in your packet is a relinquishment document. What I would like to do is have staff modify that document to include this little yellow strip.
So is everybody okay with including the little yellow strip?
Sure.
All right. Councilmember Lopez?
Who the hell saw it in the first place?
I'm certainly in favor of including the yellow.
Just knew that I was wrong.
You're
and
an
wanted
honest
to come
man,
forward,
Ted.
yeah.
You're an honest man.
I'm in favor of including the little yellow slip. I want the record to show that. But Peter, was the legal description accurate in the rest of the documents?
Yeah, so as Ted described, the operative language in the resolution refers to the vacation ordinances. It doesn't refer to a map, and so it doesn't require any additional vote on the resolution.
Thank you.
Councilmember Murphy.
My eye doctor says that my vision is better than perfect with corrective contact lenses. I never would have seen that, so don't sweat it.
Say goodnight, Ted.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all right. There's all kinds of changes in tonight, so we're just going with the flow.
I move the consent agenda with the remaining item.
Moving right along. Okay, consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Final consideration of ordinances.
Agenda Bill 21331, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham, Washington, adopting Bellingham's complete networks approach to multimodal transportation planning, stating the guiding principles and practices to ensure compliance with RCW 47.04.320, Complete Streets Grant Funding Program.
Move third and final.
Second.
Gene Knutson?
Aye.
Michael Lillquist?
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy?
Aye.
Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
April Barker?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
Aye.
Dan Hamel?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Agenda Bill 21343, an ordinance amending the 2015-2016 adopted budget, increasing budgeted revenues in the amount of $46,000, increasing appropriated expenditures in the amount of $90,000, and decreasing estimated ending reserves by $44,000 in the library gift fund.
Move third and final.
Second.
Michael Lillquist?
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy?
Aye.
Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
April Barker?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
Aye.
Dan Hamel?
Aye.
Gene Knutson?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
All right, and with that, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Our
I think you
next,
still had one or two people on the sign-up sheet that you should at least check on.
I did, but they don't appear to be here anymore unless there was someone else, but those two people that I had on the list are no longer here.
Just wanted to make
So,
sure.
but thank you, Terry, for that. Is there anyone else that did not get an opportunity to speak at public comment that would like to come down? Because if so, this is your opportunity to do so. One? Okay, so going once, twice. Thank you, Terry. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Our next meeting is September 26th. Until next time, we are adjourned.